Hello, this is a short tutorial on Photoshop, and this is the introductory part of Photoshop for the module IT skills. First of all, we have to open Photoshop. If we go to the spotlight here and type in Photoshop, you will see it under Applications, Adobe Photoshop CS6. Double click and Photoshop starts to open. Now, this is our home screen, and the first thing we're going to do is import a photograph. There are lots of different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the way that I think causes less confusion. Sometimes you can drag a photograph down to the dock where Photoshop is down here on the dock, if it's down here on the dock, here, and it'll open. A lot of people make a mistake that they look at a photograph, they double click it, and it opens up. And they can't find all these tools here, or the menus, and they're wondering what's wrong. And that's because it is opened up in a different program called Preview. So the way to make sure that you're opened up in Photoshop, and you can only work with these tools if you're in Photoshop, is to go File, Open. Find your images. I have them here in my memory stick. Pick an image. Select one. Just looking for a particular one. Okay, so I'm going to open this image. So click open, and the image opens up. Now, just make sure if you're trying to work on a photograph that you're inside of Photoshop and that you've gone through that file open process. I'm going to run through some exercises very quickly. The first tool here is called a move tool, and at the moment that won't really do anything because we're working on this background. So I want you to look at this one here. It tells us what this image is. For the moment, I want you to avoid this area here. Don't touch any of them. They're all really useful things, but if you're a beginner and starting off, they will just cause you lots of problems. So just stay away from that section. So I'm going to just run down through these tools here. The first tool is what's called a marquee. I drag from the top left-hand corner down to the bottom right-hand corner, and it gives me a rectangle. If I want it to be a square, as I'm dragging, I hold down the Shift key, which is the second key on the left from the bottom. So if you go right over to the left of your keyboard and up one from the bottom, and that makes it a square. Sorry, I let go there before I was ready. Okay. So the next thing I want you to learn is in here, this is a bucket tool. So very often it'll be like this. So you can see there's three tools there. So if you can't find the bucket, it's in the tool there, which is, can't remember what that's called, but you just go in there, gradient tool. So in behind the gradient tool, down one, paint bucket. And if I click in here, that'll fill this with this foreground color. But I don't want it sitting on top of this photograph. So what I'm going to do is go in there, into that little arrow, drop down arrow, make a new layer. I'm going to call it square and say OK. And what has happened now is I've got two boxes here, if you like. One is the background, which is my photograph, and the other is like a clear acetate piece on top of it. So I'm going to take my bucket, and with that little arrow there, I'm going to click, and that fills it with what's called a foreground color. Now if I click this one, this little double arrow, the foreground color becomes black, and I click and it becomes black. So if I click in there, I have a whole range of colors, and then I click in here to select. This is my new color here. I say OK, I go back. So I can make this box any color I like. The next thing I'm going to do is do exactly the same thing, except with an ellipse, or if I hold down the shift, it'll make it a circle. I go back and pick my bucket, and I make that. Now, what's after happening here, if I want to see these little marquee, or sometimes people call them marching ants, if I want them to go away, I hold down Command on the keyboard and D, or I go Select deselect here, but that would be available if I hadn't clicked it away. Okay, so what I want you to see has happened is I've got one image that looks like that, and then underneath it. So whatever has this gray color there is the active layer. And what an active layer means is that I've told the computer, if I'm asking you to do something, that's what I want you to do. Now, if this is turned off, this eye is turned off, the computer can't see that layer. And if this is the active layer, I'm telling the computer, do something to the layer that you can't see. So it's not able to cope with that. If it can't see it, it can't do it. So we've got to watch this all the time. What's our active layer? All right. Now, if I turn this one on and I go back to my move tool, I can move those shapes around. All right. So I can select them and put them anywhere. If I click on the background and I say, I want you to be my active layer and I want to move that umbrella, nothing happens. And it won't happen because this is a background. The background has different rules to a layer. This is a layer, this is a background. So, for example, if I wanted to move them in order, the background won't move. So it always has to stay on the bottom of the list of layers. But if I want to make it a layer, I just double click it. I call it back short, say OK. So now a couple of things have happened. One, if I get my move tool, I can move my image around now. The second thing I can do, if I want to put that on the top of this, I can change the order of these. So now my umbrella's on the top. And when that's on the top, I can't see the circles underneath. Whereas with this one, if I move this one up, pull it down. I usually find it easier to pull them down than push them up. Because this is semi-transparent, for all the transparent bits I can see through. Now, I'm very quickly going to go through the other selection tools. This is a lasso tool, and I draw with this, and then I close it, and when I close, I bring it back inside itself, and when I do that, it becomes a selection tool. I'm just going to pick a different color. Okay, say OK. Click my bucket tool, click in there. Now, sorry, I'm on the wrong layer, so I'm just going to undo that. So I can go backwards by undoing, backwards, step backwards, and put myself onto this layer. So what was happening was I just didn't look at this layer, and so it started to go onto the photograph instead of onto my acetate on top of it. So I might need just a little bit of extra stuff there to go around that blue part. I can leave that. Now, the next tool in there is called, in here, is a polygonal lasso tool. And what this is the same kind of a tool, except that it's like as if it's got chewing gum. So I pull it and I click, 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 and then I come back inside, double click, and it gives me the shape. Now what this is perfect for, I'm just going to turn off the top layer there for a second, is let's say, for example, I wanted to delete that green section here that I have. So I click and I'm selecting that selection. I'm coming down, coming over, coming up, and I'm following the path. Now, if I press the back shift button, which is the top right button on the right, with an arrow pointing left, and if I click that, sorry, if I have to make that select, click that, and that disappears. So all I'm doing with these tools is selecting areas to tell the computer, I'm going to ask you to do something, and this is the bit I want you to do too. This one is a very similar tool, but it's very handy because it kind of tries to stick to the edge where there's different colors. So you can see here, I'm just running that around, and it's like a magnet, and it's sticking to that. So it's helping me to work. This can be a really useful tool for lots of different objects and selections. So again, I could delete that. So that's the three tools in there. Now these two tools are also selection tools. I've got two. One is a quick selection, and all of these tools are useful for doing for selecting different tasks. So I'm going to pull that there, and you see I'll put it there, start in that corner, and it's picking that area. So again, you can see how fast that it selects an area, and can be really useful for selecting things. The magic wand is a similar one, and this worked really good for flat colors. Now in this case it's not picking the whole color, so I look at tolerance, and tolerance helps me to decide how much it will select. So if the tolerance is really low, it'll only pick colors that are very like it. If I go up in tolerance, I put 35 in there, and then I go here. Now you see it's picking more. You can see that that's different to that. So if I want to add that bit in, I have two things I can do. One is I can hold shift and press. Okay. The other thing is I could increase my tolerance, and it might take it. So they're all the selection tools. The next thing we're going to look at is what if we wanted to bring two photographs together. So I go File, Open, and New Image. Go in and pick a different photograph. I'll pick that one, okay. So Open. So now the first one seems to disappear, and the second one appears. I'm going to open another photograph. Okay, open. So now I've got, again, the other one seems to disappear, but I actually have access to all of them by clicking on their names up here. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Okay. So if I wanted to bring two images together, let's say that I wanted to put that building into this field, then I have to have the two images together, and I have to decide which is the host and which is the guest. In this particular case, this is going to be the host, because I'm going to take the other building and drag it into there, and this is the guest. So I'm going to pull them apart like that. Now what's happening here is this is like a magnet, and it catches the photographs, and it's a way of keeping them tidy so they're not all over the screen. But in this case we want them apart so I can see the two of them. And make sure that my move tool is selected. I catch my move tool and I drag it. Now you'll probably notice that the image doesn't seem to be coming, so you might say, oh, nothing is happening. But there is an outline around the rectangle, and that's just the computer can't draw that image as fast as I'm moving it. So when I let go in here, then it's inside on top of it. And again, I want you to look, I've got layer 1, and I'm going to name this, I'm going to call it just something there. So I double click and call it building. And I'm going to leave that as a background for the moment, so I don't need to change it, and you can see it's locked. So the two things I want to do. One is I want to get rid of all this guy. So I pick my quick selection tool and try and see if that is a good tool for that. So that's pretty good. I'm going to click delete. So you can see now that you can see back in through the first image. Okay, so that's taken away too much of the image. So I might just try taking it in little sections. Okay, again it's taken, so I'm going to, no. Okay, I'll go to the magic wand and try that one. So that's working perfectly, so I'll just take that away. So when I want to get rid of those marching ants, I go select, deselect, or on the keyboard I can choose Command D, and that takes it away. So the next thing is my building is too big. So I go in here, I click my rectangle. Now previously we were using this just to fill in things, but now we're going to select this, and I'm going to go Edit, Transform, Scale, and drag that from the right. I'm going to make it small. Now if I need to, I can keep it in proportion. Get the move tool. Okay, so I have to apply it. Yep. So I'm going to just drop that in there. So now the building appears to be in location. Might have been a bit more careful, but just for this demonstration I have to do it quickly. So you get the sense of how to bring different photographs together. If I wanted to, I could pull out the umbrella, and with this one I want to put back all the colors I took out. So I'm going to go File, Revert, and it reverts back to the last time that I saved the file. Just take a second. Okay, make sure my Move tool is there, and drag that in. So just to show, I'll just show you a couple of more things that you can do. Okay, I'm nudging it now with the keyboard arrows because it was acting up a little funny with when I was dragging it. So I could take my selection, my marquee, and delete, and now I would see through the other image. The other thing I can do, making sure my Move tool is selected, I could pick that, go into opacity here, and drag it down and make it semi-transparent, so I can now see multiple images. I think that's about as much as I can show you on this particular tutorial. You would now go File, Save the document. What I'm looking for in terms of requirements will be on the handout. 3 images showing that you know how to use these tools here, and there are more tools that we could use, but I have to keep the tutorial short. And that you know how to use layers, and that you're bringing those information together to make 3 images that are aesthetically pleasing. If you have any questions, you can always contact me. So to save this, I'm going to go File, Save As. Opens up this dialog box. Now I'm going to save it as a Photoshop document. Sometimes I may want to save it as a JPEG, which will flatten all the layers. I won't be able to get back at them. But if I do that, I can just say save as a JPEG. In this case, I'm going to save it as a PSD document. And then I will collect the files that you have finished on my hard disk. There will be follow-up workshops following this tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching.